Hello, my name's Robin Brown from Environics Research Group, and I'm going to talk about presenting data, presenting the research information that we collect. And in order to do that, I'd like to start with some basic principles of communication. And one of the key elements to successful communication is empathy. Empathy is what helps the speaker understand his or her audience, who they are, and what it is that they're looking for from the information that's being communicated. Consider this example. A young guy goes to college. His first week, he phones home. He makes 2 phone calls to 2 different audiences. He's describing exactly the same evening, but he's tailoring his information to his different audiences. The first call is to his mom. The second call is to his buddy. And you can see the way he's presenting that information is very different. And the reason is because he has empathy. He understands who his audience is, and he understands what his audience are looking for, and how he wants to connect with that audience. Consider this far less frivolous example. The Chinese artist Ai Weiwei was deeply affected by the earthquake in Shenzhen in 2008. And in particular, he was distressed by the lack of information that the Chinese government was willing to provide about the earthquake, and particularly about the victims of the earthquake, and in particular the number of school children who'd died as a result of the earthquake and the shoddy building practice that was prevalent in that area. So he set about to do his own research, actually at great risk to himself, and he compiled a complete comprehensive list of the number and the names of the school children who died as a result of the earthquake. Once he completed that research, he needed to present that information. Now, he could obviously simply state the number and state the names, or he could present it in a chart. There are any number of ways he could choose to do so. But what he did was this. This artwork displays a quotation which says, "She lived happily on this earth for 7 years." And that's a quotation from the mother of one of the victims of the earthquake. The way that this has been made and created is that it's made of school backpacks. There are 9,000 backpacks in all, and that represents one for each of the school children who died as a result of the earthquake. Now, clearly, Ai Weiwei didn't want to strip the emotion from the data, from the information that he was presenting. In fact, he wanted to ensure that it was fully present when he's presenting that information. And the reason he wanted that was because he wanted his audience to remember. He wanted to have an impact, and ultimately he wanted his audience to act. Now, we in the market research industry obviously are not dealing with information of this magnitude and not, these kind of tragic events, but we do have one thing in common with Ai Weiwei, and that is that we want the information that we're presenting to be remembered, and we want it to have an impact, and we want our audience to act as a result of the information that we're communicating. Now, in order to do that, just as Ai Weiwei did, we need to ensure empathy, we need to ensure connection with our audience, and we need to inject or maintain the emotion that's in the information that we're providing. Traditionally, the research industry has shied away from that, I think in part because our practices are based on social science, and we want to ensure that the collection of the information and the presentation of the information is as scientific as possible, and we've actively tried to avoid the emotion that is involved in that information. And I believe that has been a mistake in the past, and increasingly it is no longer tenable. And one of the reasons is that we're living in a new time when in the past we lived in an era where information was scarce and time was plentiful. Now information is plentiful and time is scarce. And so, as most of you know, our clients and our stakeholders, they are drowning in information. They have an enormous amount of information. So our task, it becomes more imperative that we are impactful, that we engage our audience, and that the information that we present is remembered, and that ultimately people then act as a result of it. So given that, the need to create empathy is greater, and therefore the need to ensure that the emotion in the information that we're providing is not stripped out, that we use it to engage our audience. At Environics, we've taken a close look at how we're presenting information and how we can be most effective for our clients in communicating that information. And we've isolated 4 questions that we need to ask and we need to have answered in order to build effective empathy with our audience. The first one is, who's the audience? Secondly, what's the nature of the information being shared? Thirdly, how should it be shared? And the final one is, what is the objective of sharing it? Who's the audience is a question that is currently probably relatively effectively asked in the research industry. And that audience could be C-suite, it could be sales, could be marketing, could be other stakeholders. And I think we have a good practice currently of knowing who our audience is. And just like the college kid knows whether he's talking to his mom or his buddy, we need to know this in order to effectively tailor the communication that we're providing. So this is a fundamental, and I think that it's something that, as I say, we as researchers are now relatively good at doing. The second question is probably not asked so frequently, but we believe it is equally as essential. And what we're trying to find out is the nature of the information that's being shared. And the way we're doing that is to segment different kinds of information. We could be, for example, evaluating the impact or success of an initiative or an activity, and that's typically the case with tracking data, in which case the communication needs to be crisp and the outcome needs to be clear. Or we could be trying to provide deep insights into a population or an event. Infographics that bucket information often work well if that's the case. We may be exploring something together with our audience. Or we may be trying to inspire our audience with opportunities. For example, the work that we do in multicultural marketing often requires us to present to a large organization and inspire action around the insights that we have provided. All of these things will impact they should impact how we present and how we communicate the data. The third question is, how should it be shared? How are we intending, and how does our client want us to share the information? Typically, we plan for a one-time meeting and a leave behind, and that could be electronic or it could be paper version. But I think that what we need to do beyond that is ask, how far does that information need to be socialized within the organization? Who does it need to reach, and how do they need to interact with it? Does it need to be interactive? And if that's the case, who is it that's going to interact with it? Will those people want to explore and diagnose the information, or will they want an easy summary of it that they can process and act on swiftly? And the last question is, what's the objective of sharing it? Why are we sharing this information? we obviously focus a lot on the research objectives and the business objectives of our clients, but I don't think we, again, as an industry, really focus on what is the objective of sharing that information. If we go back to our college kid friend, he's got two objectives there depending on his audience. To his mom, he wants to reassure her that he's having fun, everything's okay, she doesn't need to worry. To his buddy, he wants to share a laugh and to some extent show off about what a good time he's having. So they're two very different objectives to sharing that information. And it's the same with the research information that we're sharing with our clients. Those objectives can range from foundational information to facilitate planning, or it could be far more focused on resolving a specific issue, for example, a decision on positioning or package design. And I and many researchers have experienced the presentation after the decision, in which case the function's very different. It's a recap. The intention is to make sure that everybody is aligned on what the implications of the information are and what the next steps are. So the way a presentation should be structured and delivered depends very much on the objectives. Why is that information being shared within an organization? Market researchers are technical people, and we tend to gravitate towards tools that provide solutions. So when we think about communication, we often think about the tools that are enable us to communicate. And we're fortunate to be living in an era that there are many more tools available now than there were in the past. But it's important to bear in mind that until those 4 questions have been answered, until we've established strong empathy with our audience, we shouldn't be thinking about tools. We shouldn't be considering which tool is appropriate. Only when those 4 questions have been answered can we then choose the right tool. As I said, there are many available to us now. The tried and true method that is used, I think, in the majority of cases is the PowerPoint presentation. There's also now dashboards that can be used to explore and summarize data, and increasingly video, we're finding, is becoming more and more important as the need to engage the audience becomes greater, and the video is a very effective means of doing that. And finally, of course, there are digital tools to visualize data, and these are improving very rapidly to ensure that the way that the information is being presented is highly impactful. So we're fortunate that we are living in a time when the tools available for us to communicate are greater than ever, but we shouldn't lose sight of that foundation, empathy, and the empathy that we need to build and develop with our clients. And we do that by successfully answering those 4 questions. If we do that successfully, we can be very effective in communicating information, in ensuring that it's engaging, ensuring that it's remembered, and ultimately ensuring that it's acted upon. Because until that happens, obviously the data doesn't have any value in itself. If we do that effectively, we succeed, we achieve our goal. If we don't, then the results can be ineffective or even potentially quite embarrassing. Thank you for taking time to listen to the presentation. And if you have questions, then please contact me via email. I'll be very happy to answer them.